you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Well, good morning and welcome to another edition of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Now, to get in contact with the show, you can dial this number, which is 516-453-9921. Let me repeat that, 516-453-9921. And if you would like to Gmail me, you can by this address, the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. Now, that will not be read today, more than likely, but it will be read at some point in time if it is not automatically deleted. The system will get out when you get so many of them. Hopefully, we can get to yours. But the calls come first. And speaking of calls, and I will probably say this again, I think I may have made a mistake or confusion, and that is one thing that we do not want to have is confusion. And that is when you call in and I ask you to, if you want to have a question or a comment for Mr. Fuller, I ask you to press the number 1 button. Evidently, I must have communicated that when you press that button, you will go to the head of the line. If I did that, that is incorrect. I want to make that plain again. If I did that, it is incorrect. It is my fault. What happens is when you press that number 1 button, you will get in line. There may be other callers ahead of you. You will get in line, and then you will move up as the calls are being answered. But I want to make it plain that you will not go to the head of line. I guess they call it dishing other callers and all that kind of thing. That is not true, but I wanted to make that plain so that there is no confusion, because that is the one thing that we don't want on this program. And I will probably repeat that again all throughout the program. But anyway, with that being said, the chat room is open. And I want to say grand rising to all of my people in the chat room, Sean, Glenn, Neuron, and this name that I'm going to mess up, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to try to do that. But anyway, thank you for the chat room. Okay, let's start the program off by saying good morning, Mr. Fuller, and how are you?
Good morning, sir. I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Okay, Mr. Fuller, in meetings that I have conducted during the week, a question came up, and I've heard you say this, maybe not in this exact form, but the question came up, and I'm quite sure that the callers that are calling in may have a question in this realm. But I've heard you mention when we were on TalkTameItRadio.com that something to this effect that if we solve the race problem, that all other problems can be solved, or something similar to that. Could you explain it as we go into today's show? If we solve the race problem first, that's what it was, first, then all these other problems could be solved. Could you elaborate on that, please, sir?
Well, I sort of said that in a slang-type fashion to make the point. I said if you solve the race problem, all the other problems in the world you can do on your lunch hour. And I was just saying that to emphasize the importance of solving the race problem, because it'll be much easier, almost a breeze, to solve all the other problems in the world if you eliminate the race problem. The race problem is just that serious. And if you don't solve the race problem, it's going to make every other problem to be solved much, much more difficult, as it has been all along. It interferes with everything that people set out to do that is of constructive value. Now, anything that's non-constructive, the race problem, really, it fits right into that. Mm-hmm. Anything that has, when I say non-constructive, now I don't mean material things. The system of racism is very efficient, the most efficient system in recorded history, in my opinion, when it comes to producing material things, all type of scientific achievements, et cetera, et cetera. Very efficient. But what it isn't efficient at is quality relationships between people. And so if you don't have that, then what's the point in having a lot of material things, all kind of stuff, I mean, in your garages and then throughout the house and in the attic and more stuff. I mean, we're just producing stuff. All kinds of trinkets, all kinds of scientific achievements. I mean, many of them that we definitely need and should have. But relationships, or you can't call them quality relationships, which is how the code refers to them, as they should be. None of them are of any quality at all. I think there's a newspaper article in the Washington Post this morning said that the Pope in Rome said recently in a speech that the entire world is seriously ill. Of course, many people of many different faiths, many different political persuasions have said that as far back as anybody can remember. But with the race problem being what at the forefront of everything, and even when it's in the background and people say there is no real race problem, we got thousands of other problems that come way ahead of the race problem, which in my opinion is not true. The race problem is the biggest problem on the planet. And that's why I said what I said. There are people who will disagree with it, but I say that almost anything you set out to do is going to be attached to the race problem. And that's going to be the biggest problem in anything you set out to do. That has to do with producing constructive results. So you do have a sick world in all 9 areas of activity when it comes to relationships between people. That's in economics, sick, just as crazy as it can be. Education, all over the place. Miseducation, all over the place. Entertainment, shambles. Most of it is non-constructive. Most of the ways we entertain ourselves is non-constructive. At the end of whatever it is you're doing, I mean, there's not a constructive thought that you can get out of it. And in labor, it's always in turmoil. Law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Of course, war itself is turmoil. Yes. And all of it is war in the system of white supremacy. War on relationships. That's what the system of white supremacy produces. War on all relationships between people. That's what it's designed to keep going and to glorify.
Yes, sir. Okay, in all 9 areas of people activity. If
24 hours a day, everywhere.
Everywhere.
The race problem poisons every type of relationship you can name, no matter how hard people try. The race problem just makes a shambles out of relationships, any type of relationship between people.
Okay. That's what we're opening up the program with today. There's callers on the line which we will get to, but I want you to bear in mind, because we, like I said, we had meetings this week or past week, and that was the question that came up. That something that Mr. Fuller has mentioned a few times for those who haven't heard it, for those who have heard it. If the race problem is solved first, well, that's the first time I heard that was on Talktainment Radio first. If that problem is solved first, all the other problems that you would have in every area that he just mentioned, in every area of people activity, can be solved. Now, people don't believe that, but I happen to believe what Mr. Fuller has said. Let me go to this right here. This comes from Neuron. It says this: hello, Mr. Fuller. What advice do you have for black people, Mr. Fuller, particularly black males, who are so unhappy, sad, and depressed because of this system and contemplate ending their life? I ask this because of recent events with a black male in Louisiana, and I'm sure it's something that many victims understand, unfortunately. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for addressing this question.
Well, the suggestion that the code makes is that you don't do that when you were born into this situation. And I came to the conclusion many years ago that the race problem is the biggest problem on the planet, and that I was born at the time and place that I was born in, right in the center of it, which means I came to the conclusion after many years of thinking about it, when I first started thinking about it, when I got around to really thinking about it, that's my assignment. So if you check out without doing the best you can to carry out your assignment, then you are aborting what you were born to do. See, and I came to the conclusion that for every black male on the planet, and black female or any black person, but particularly since you asked specifically about the black male's assignment is to solve the race problem. And I came to that conclusion because I started off, once I was really aware of how serious the race problem is, trying to figure out how to get around it. And, try to dodge it, trying to run away from it. In fact, at my first 30 years of being on the planet, I was trying to run away from any kind of problem. I thought the best way to handle a problem is to run. Just find something, to get away from wherever the source of the problem is. But then I came to the conclusion that, no, I'm not supposed to be running from the race problem. I'm supposed to be grabbing armloads of it as my assignment and wrestling with it and tossing it to the ground and to oblivion. That's my assignment. That's why I was born. It's like the paratrooper said in the movie Band of Brothers. One lieutenant talking to another, and one lieutenant is telling the other, hey, Lieutenant, you better get your man out of here because in a little while you're going to be surrounded by the enemy forces. And he responded by saying, we're paratroopers. We're supposed to be surrounded, implying that what we do, we drop right in the middle of where the worst problems are. That's our job. That's what we train for. We drop right in the middle of where all the real action is, and everything is looking absolutely horrendous. That's what we drop ourselves into when we drop out of the airplanes. And then we fight our way out of it. See, now everybody else, is trying to run from that type of situation. We go to that type of situation because that's what we train for. Now, if every black male gets that attitude in his mind, it's a whole new world. Mm-hmm. And you feel relieved because you're really on your assignment, even though the assignment is dreadful. but you embrace it. I mean, you grab armloads of it, like my old black sergeant used to say when I was in what they call the Air Force. I mean, look, and what the congressman said, good trouble. That's something that rang a bell with me. The recent congressman who passed away, he said, "Hey, you make good trouble. That's your job. Make good trouble." Now he meant by that, according to his record and all like that, you walk right into this racism thing. I mean, don't run from it, because you try to run from it, it just gets worse. That's what drives you crazy. All right, trying to run from it because it was driving me crazy.
Yes, sir.
I was trying to find every excuse not to deal with racism. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear about it. I mean, nothing can be done about it anyway. Boo-hoo-hoo. Take me somewhere where there's paradise. That's where I want to be. I don't want to be where there's racism. I mean, I want to find out where Oz is. I want heaven on earth. But I was told by someone, he said, Fuller, you don't run from trouble. Your job is to straighten out trouble.
Straighten out trouble. Okay. All righty, let's do this. Let's go to the phone lines. Keeping in mind what we started the theme of the program out to, solving the race problem. And we are going to go to the 223, and that is Darnell with a VGQ. Let me see if I can get you in, Darnell. Just a second here. Okay. Darnell, we got you on here. Darnell, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
I just have a VGQ today. If that's okay with you, Mr. Bobby?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Okay. My VGQ is white folks do nothing that is not to their advantage. Correction. White folks do nothing that they think is not to their advantage. In conclusion, white folks do nothing that is not to be disadvantage of blacks. Solution. Every time the white man comes to help you, check out his motive and what he's getting out of it. Once you know, figure out how you can get what you want without him getting what he wants. Don't forget, America owes you everything. You paid your dues. You owe America nothing. Thank you, Mr. Bobby. All
righty. Thank you, sir. Okay, let me see here. That was Darnell with his VGQ. I want to thank JMCL5078. He said he's on code with his VGQ already. So thank you very much for that. And he said this is another great show. Let's do this one here. Let's go to Harlem. Keeping in mind, staying focused now, solving the race problem. Let's go to the 917. And Joe, let me see if I can click you in here. Let's see, Joe. Okay, yeah, there you go. Joe, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning,
my
sir.
question. Thank you. My question is about how important it is to have a counter-racist language. And
because
to use counter-racist language. And to use
how
counter-racist
important
language, I guess.
is it to have a counter-racist language?
Yes.
It's very important. That's why I wrote a word guide. I mean, to kind of guide us in that direction. See, we can use, whatever language you speak, whether it's English, French, Arabic, Spanish, you find words that will help you to do whatever it is you're trying to do. And if you're using counter-racist language, you're trying to use language that counters racism. So you can take the same words. You don't have to invent a new language, you might say, from the language you already speak. Just wherever you are, whatever language you speak, you find words and arrange those words, because words are nothing but tools, just like in a toolbox. And you can take a word and, let's say in the English language, like I've done, and just give them new definitions. Just pick out a word, and if you don't like the way the word is used, or you don't think it's constructive to use it in the manner in which it is being used, then you just given another definition altogether. I gave the definition of justice many, many decades ago. Not the one I didn't like any of the ones that I saw in what we call all the dictionaries. So I said, I'm going to make it simple and to the point. And it will fit right into counter-racist science, I think. So I came up with a definition for justice, and that is 2 parts. Justice is guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. That's part 1. Part 2, guaranteeing that the person who needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, I don't add anything else to that. And I don't use the standard dictionary definitions because they were all over the place, in my opinion. I said, justice, the compensatory definition, that's what I call it, making up for the definition that I say is really missing. That's what compensation means. I can't deal with the other definitions because the other definitions, many of them had the word fair in them, being treated fairly. Well, fair in the same dictionary would also be associated with the word white. So if you talking about getting justice, treated fairly, treated justly and fair, meaning the same thing, fairly and justice, then does that mean that someone who is white is the only person that can ascertain what justice is and who gets it and how and when, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So I didn't like that word fair because they don't even spell alike, associated with the word justice. But it would always come up, or many times come up, associated with the word justice, the word F-A-I-R, my fair lady, that type of thing. I mean, how is the word fair being used? Treat me fairly. Treat me whitely? Well, what does that mean within the context of the system of white supremacy? Oh, well, if you really want to do anything that makes sense when it comes down to getting the correct treatment, you have to be talking to somebody white. That's how it comes across in the recesses of people's minds. See, so the English language is formed. The white supremacists has taken words in the English language and used them to support what they do, which is practice racism. So what you do is just counter racism. You invent new definitions for old words where you have purity and truth. So you don't use the new words to tell a lie. I mean, that's going backwards because that's what the white supremacists thrive off of, telling lies. So you want to always use the language in such a way that it reveals truth. So that's what, in answer to your question, yes, you just look in the dictionary, or if you're talking to someone and the person says, well, wait a minute, that's not what that word means, and you say, that's the way I'm using the word. Because you can use words any kind of way you want to. Now, there'll be people who will object to it, but you'll just say, I'm using the word in order to accomplish a goal that needs to be accomplished because the way these words have been used up to now are not accomplishing the goal that needs to be accomplished. And then you make your case based on that.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Joe from Harlem. We appreciate it. And don't be a stranger to the program. Let me see here. Let's go here. Mr. Fuller, let me see if I can get his up here. Yes. This is from Black Justice. It says this. Mr. Fuller, does the limited life experience of non-white people make it more difficult for them to understand your code?
I would think so. Yes, limited experiences. Sure. Experiences, if they're unlimited and people have had them, the more experiences you have, the closer you come to understanding the truth about anything. You know, you experience going to the moon, so when you get back, if you can tell people more things than the people that didn't go, most likely, at least you can reveal the things that you saw, the things that you touched, because you experienced it. You were there. That's why even in court they'll say, well, hey, the judge will say, well, I want the people in here who were on the scene, who were there. That's who I want in here, not some people who were somewhere who heard something secondhand and thirdhand and all that. That might be helpful, but it's best to have someone who was an eyewitness. Well, the eyewitnesses come forward, the people who were right there and saw it as it happened. And so, sure, in answer to the question, experiences count. And black people have experienced a lot of things, but they didn't interpret their experiences the way that they really were. Because sometimes you can be in a situation and you're actually looking at something, but you're not seeing what you're looking at. And that, I put a phrase in the 1984 edition of the code book back in the back, that in racial matters, many look, but few see.
Oh, wow.
See what? See what they're looking at. And so there's an old saying, can't see the forest for the trees. Black people are looking at racism all the time. It's sort of what you call look, quote, unquote, look. But looking is not the same as seeing.
Ooh,
you're looking at racism all the time, but you don't see it because you have been trained by the white supremacists not to see it, even when it's right in your face.
That was heavy, Mr. Fuller. I just got to say it. That was heavy. Speaking about heavy, let me do this. Let's cue up that music here. You are listening to the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Heard, well, I was going to say exclusively, but here on blogtalkradio.com. We invite you to call in at 516-453-9921. Again, 516-453-9921. And be sure to press the number 1 button and you will get in line. Let me say this concerning that. I made a mistake by indicating that when you press the number 1 button, you will go to the top of the line. That is not true. That is not true. If I did it, and I think I did, that's not true. What will happen is when you do press the number 1 button, you will get in rotation so that Mr. Fuller can answer your question. I just want to clear that up, just in case somebody would think that they were going to dish other people who were already online. So please forgive me, ma'am. Please forgive me, sir. I'm still learning. Okay. Now, you can also contact me or contact Mr. Fuller by the Gmail at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. And it probably will not be read today, but it will be in there. And also in the chat room, you can ask a question there. More than likely it will not be read, but sometimes if there's a space, the question will be read so Mr. Fuller can address that. So, grand rising to everybody. The chat room is full. I'm going to tell you that right now. Thank you for all of that. And let's go back to the questions. Finishing up with Black Rant. Says this, or excuse me, I'm sorry, Black Justice said this, Mr. Fuller. He says, could you please ask Mr. Fuller how Mr. Fuller defines equality and balance? Are they the same? Are they in the word guide, and do they mean the same thing?
Well, I usually don't lean toward the use of the word equality. I just say balance between people. That's the definition of justice, my first broad definition. But the specific definition, because I wanted to have something that people could really use and measure. And I said the broad definition for justice would be balance between people. But then I said, I'm going to put some more flesh on those bones. And then I was more specific. And I recited it just a little while ago, a few minutes ago in this program. Mm-hmm. Number one, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated at no time. And number two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And no exceptions to that. Worldwide, justice has never been produced in recorded history. As far as I know, I don't know of any place where no one is being mistreated and everybody who needs help is getting it, and the person who is among all of those people who need help, the person that needs help the most is always getting it in every circumstance. That's a difficult proposition. But it's a theory and a concept that I say is possible. Because a lot of things that people have said is impossible have been proven to be possible by those things being done. And I've witnessed that the whole time I've been on this planet. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying justice can be produced, but it hasn't been in recorded history. People who are going around saying, well, at one time there was a just society, not in recorded history. I don't know of anybody, any history book that will reveal that there was some setup somewhere where no one was mistreated in any so-called civilization, ancient or otherwise, and the person that needs help the most always got the most constructive help. I don't know if that ever happened in recorded history, but we can make it happen. Mm-hmm. There's a scientific way of going about guaranteeing that will happen. Okay. And that's the purified and the measurable criteria for justice. Okay. Anything other than that, you can't call it justice, in my opinion.
Yes, sir. Okay, we're focusing in on solving the race problem first, or solving it first, or addressing it, and all the other problems will basically disappear. But we got to solve that one first. Let's go to the phone lines, and we're going to go to the 646, and that is going to be Michael. Let me see, Michael. Yeah, from the Bronx. Michael, got you on here. Good morning, and how are you, sir?
I'm fine, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr.
Good,
Bobby.
Sir.
Good morning, Mr. Fuller. Yes, I wanted to ask a question about refined white supremacy. Now, as you say, Mr. Fuller, we have advanced into the refinement stage of white supremacy, and I'm seeing it more and more every day, and especially with our new presidential administration. Now, I think many people would say our last, the predecessor, Mr. Trump, who left office, was an open, unrefined white supremacist, and people would say that Joe Biden was his opposite. He was his refined counterweight. Now, as Joe Biden has become president, I'm seeing more and more now that more and more refined strategies to talk about racism, but not actually confront it. So I'm seeing things such as climate change is a racial justice issue. Immigration is a racial justice issue. All of these things that seemingly don't have anything to obviously do with race it might have to do with it indirectly. They're talking about things. Okay, let me just make it more concise.
Yeah, because we're short on time, so yeah.
Yes, they tend to talk about black issues, but they do it in a way where they want to help everybody else other than black people. So they'll bring up a statistic and then say, oh, black people, 8 in 10 black people are hungry. Okay, now let's help all the other non-white races with hunger when the people who are supposed to be receiving the most help aren't getting the most help. Is there a way that we could counteract this from our presidential administration? Because that seems to be the primary strategy in keeping the racial pyramid where it is, where black people are on the bottom and white people are on the top, instead of every group of people being treated fairly.
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
You can look at anybody's plan. So you always ask, what is the plan? And when the person puts forth a plan, because if you're going to do something, you should have a plan. That's part of the code. Anybody who proposes anything, the question is, where's the plan? You're going to do something now. I mean, where is the plan? I mean, people talk and talk and talk, but where is the plan? And so when a person presents the plan, you look at the plan, and then you ask the most important question if it has to do with people. And that's what we've been discussing so far in this program and in all the programs that we have here. That is, now, this plan, it involves people. Now, is it going to produce justice? This plan that you're proposing, in every part of it, is it going to guarantee that no one is mistreated? That's question one. Question two, is it going to guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help? So you don't have to mention anybody's name or anything. I mean, when they present the plan, just look at the plan or have somebody recite it. And you say, now, wait a minute. This part of the plan, item number 4, is it going to guarantee that no person is mistreated? Question 1. Question 2, is it going to guarantee that the person in this plan who needs help the most going to get the most constructive help? Yes or no? Because, you know, if the answer is, well, we don't know about that or something, hey, back to the drawing board, we need another plan. That's my reaction. That's code. See, code is getting to the specifics right quick, not dragging on month after month talking about a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and some of this over here, over yonder and whatnot. No. No. Everything in codification is very strict and very exact and pretty quick. That's what we need. That eliminates what? Confusion, which is what you don't want. So you don't even have to get into the names of the people. It's best not to. The names of who's involved in it and all like that and what their category is, male, female, white, non-white, you just say, where's the plan? And they say, well, we don't have a plan. Well, talk to me when we get a plan. All right? That's the way that works. That should be black people's our procedure. That's the codified way of doing things. And what is the plan? Well, we are working on it. Well, when you get it finished, let me see it. And I have questions about the plan. And that plan has got to guarantee those two things in order to produce what? A thing called justice. That's what. If it involves people, it's got to be a plan that guarantees justice. Otherwise, back to the drawing board.
All righty. Thank you, Michael, from the Bronx, and do not be a stranger. Let's see here. Mr. Fuller, this is what I'm going to do here, just a little bit early, and then I'm going to do this secondly. We're talking about solving the race problem first, and then all of the other problems that we going to confront, and you made mention of it earlier in the program, in the 9 areas of people activity will be solved. But you've got to solve that problem first. That's what we're honing in on. Now, in order to do that, you mentioned that we had to have, and we talk about it every week, a code. And you have written a book called the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. And I want to take this time right now to have you explain about this book before we go on with the program. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Well, it's a basic plan. That's what the book is. Addressed to whom? Addressed to the individual victim of white supremacy, which is the biggest problem on earth, in my opinion. And if there's another problem, that is the biggest problem. I want somebody to tell me what it is and explain it, and I'll listen. But I came to that conclusion. So, a long time ago, many decades ago. So I wrote a book that's designed for the individual person who is a victim of white supremacy, giving some guidelines, not all, but some, to get started, about what to say, what not to say, how to say it, what words to use, what words not to use, and what problem you're supposed to be trying to solve ultimately, and what problems you're trying to solve in order to get to the ultimate problem solved, and that is the replacement of the system of white supremacy with a system of justice and correctness, and the production, by doing that, of a thing called peace. That's the ultimate goal, with universal man and universal woman in tune with the very best of everything that is in the known universe. That's what will qualify everybody to be a universal man and a universal woman, which, in my opinion, should be the universal goal of everybody on the planet, to qualify for that title. Universal man, universal woman, quote, unquote, in tune with everything that is of constructive value in the known universe, and also in the unknown universe as the unknown universe becomes known. Everything constructive, never anything non-constructive. That should be the ultimate goal. But you got to get rid of the system of white supremacy first. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you can't accomplish any of that. So the textbook is designed to help the individual non-white person, black, brown, red, yellow, everybody classified as non-white, to get to that goal. Since nobody else is producing any kind of volume, telling you step by step how to go about doing it on a daily basis, wherever you happen to be on the planet. That's what I wrote the book for. The individual person. What can you do? Where you are. What should you say, not say, in order to do the best thing to get the best possible result? Always keep in mind, any move that you make is supposed to produce the best possible result with what you have, of what is available to you. Because we're all prisoners of war. You're classified as non-white. So what do you do in this giant prison called the system of white supremacy? That's what the book is designed to help you do. Help me do. Help anybody who's classified as non-white. You can get it by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is how to go about getting the volumes and the titles of the book, and a little information about what's in the books, which we have been discussing, I've been discussing here on this program.
Okay. ProduceJustice.com. There's a key word that Mr. Fuller just mentioned, and that word is results. And there is a good video of what Mr. Fuller is speaking about on YouTube. And my friend who writes all the time, Daryl Weston, got me straight on that. It's called We Need Results, Not More Hot Air. And you can find it on YouTube on the TPIM Sir Live broadcast where Mr. Fuller and Dr. Randy Short discussed that. I have viewed that many, many times, but it's about results, not hot air. You know, and you might want to check that out. It would really do you some good. In my opinion, but we're not interested in my opinion. Okay. Going on with the program here, solving the problem of racism, white supremacy first. Keep that in mind as you ask your questions. Mr. Fuller, this comes from Sean Glenn, says this. Can you tell Mr. Fuller my coworker is like his dad's Jolapi? Ask Mr. Fuller if he can explain the importance of having a Jolapi around.
Well, Jolapi, they called him that because he used to try to work on old cars. He couldn't read and write. He didn't even remember anything about his past. He just remembered frightened by the Goodyear blimp balloon. It came over. He was walking through the woods in what we figured was the state of Louisiana when he was real young, because he didn't even know what state he was in. He was very, very ignorant, very, very ignorant, very primitive. His first name was Tom, but people named him Jolapi, along with a few other names, but that's the one that kind of stuck. And people used to make fun of him and laugh at him and all like that. He didn't have any teeth in his mouth, even though he was real young. He lost all his teeth. Some of them probably knocked out by people while he was riding freight trains and whatnot, getting in fights and whatnot. But he had an excellent heart. Always had the correct intentions. And in answer to the question, in working at my father's cafe, my father catered to him and tried to look out for him and tried to help him. He got off a freight train, I guess, and when he wasn't walking, that's how black people traveled in the old days, by freight train. This itinerant black males looking for some place to go, trying to escape being lynched, all that type of thing. So he didn't remember anything about his parents or anything. Just a drifter, just a young boy, probably about maybe from the time he was extremely young, somebody just dumped him off on the side of the road. We never knew his history, and he never knew anything about it. Never knew what state he was in or what town he was in until somebody told him, because he couldn't read and write. So my father gave him a job as a dishwasher and later as a cook, because he learned how to cook by watching people cook, working as a dishwasher. So I asked him one day, I said, why do you keep Jolapi around here? Because he kind of messes up everything. I was real young then, maybe about 10 years old. And my father said, he almost teared up. And he said, Jolapi is always here. And he doesn't steal anything. You know, black people didn't have nothing. So, you know, some black people even bragged about stealing. They say, man, that's a pretty good job over there. You get $7 a week and all you can steal. I've heard people use that expression in the old days. I mean, we were, it was pitiful. So he said, that's two characteristics that Jolapi had. Said, he didn't have anything. Didn't have nothing but the clothes on his back. Raggedy clothes at that. But Jolapi would not steal anything. Somehow that was just a part of it. Anything that he wanted. I don't care any amount of money that you lay around there. I mean, he wouldn't touch it. He wouldn't pick up a knife or a fork or anything without your permission. He was just that way. Somehow he got that. And my father valued that. He said, I keep Jolapi around here. Not only that, he needs help. He needs help. People laugh at him and make fun of him and all like that, but he needs help. That stuck with me to this day.
All righty. He needs help. Jolapi. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. I never knew that. I had another thought in mind what a jalopy was, but now I know. Thank you so much. Back to the phone lines in the 954. We're going to go up to Chi-Town, and that's going to be Nicole. Nicole, welcome to the program. Good morning, and how are you?
I'm fine. Can you hear me fine?
Yes, we can hear you, Nicole. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Good morning, Hotep. My question was, being meek, it might be a statement/question, being meek consistently in community may that level of consistency with being meek cause ripple change in systems? Did I say that correctly?
I don't know. Mr. Fuller, did you understand that question?
No, I didn't.
Okay, could you repeat that,
Okay,
Nicole?
so let me rephrase that.
Okay.
Being a well-disciplined, or I use the word meek as the Bible, being a well-disciplined individual consistently in a community in which I live, will that level of consistency of being a disciplined person cause at least a ripple effect of change in a white supremacy? Excuse me, I have a list. I try to avoid certain words. And a change in a white order system.
Well, I call it having a code. A code for what? What do you mean by code? A way of doing things that always produces a constructive result. If I understand what your question is, that's putting it in simple language, straight to the point. That's codified. That's the codified way of saying it. In other words, everything that you do, you stand back and if you get ready to say something, you say, now, how can I say this to produce the most constructive result?
Right.
And then if it's something you're going to do rather than something you're going to say, this thing that I'm fixing to do, is it going to produce a constructive result? And then you talk that way all the time. You ask that question of other people. I mean, people will say this and they say that. Well, hey girl, you know how we talk and whatnot. Let's do this and let's do that. And let's go over here. Let's go, And you say, and what you do according to the code is just say, wait a minute, slow down, Gloria. This thing you want to do, is it going to produce a constructive result? Yes or no? See, that's getting right to the point. See, black people should have as their aim to be the most constructive people on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And start getting that type of, you're talking about discipline, rather than just wander all over the place. Just center on two words, constructive results. That's it. In everything that you say and do. Well, you're coming over to my house, coming over to your house for what? Well, we're going to party. Oh, wait a minute, hold it. This party. This party that you're going to have, what's going to be the constructive result? And once you ask that question, put a question mark behind it and wait for the answer. See, that's code. That's hardcore code. We need that. Black people need that all over the world. Center on those two words. That's the whole code. Constructive results. Any move that you make is supposed to produce that. Anything that you say is supposed to produce that. That's code. Counter-racist code. Pure. Simple. not wandering all over the place. I mean, that's a slam dunk from any spot in the court, to use a basketball comparison. Yes, just always think, have those two words in mind. Anytime somebody is talking to you, making a proposal, white or non-white, your question, have that ready. Everything that you have said for the last 3 hours, sir, what's going to be the constructive result if we do what you just suggested we do? Can you enumerate them?
Mm-hmm.
And then you wait for the answer. Don't argue about the answer. Just wait for the answer and have other questions ready. That's a part of the code, too, if you have some more questions. But the main thing is constructive result. What's going to be the constructive result? Because black people are not supposed to be involved in anything, anytime, that's not going to produce a constructive result.
All righty. Thank you, Nicole. Do not be a stranger to the program. Let's see here. Let me do this right quick. I got about 4 minutes before this segment is out. I believe this is Swa. Swa, is this you? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a question? Because I got that little indicator of a question. Do you have a question for Mr. Fuller?
Yeah, I have a question that comes from my ratio mate. She wants me to relay a question to Mr. Fuller, if that's okay.
Okay. I got 3 minutes on this segment. Is that going to be enough time?
Uh-huh.
Or I can put you on mute and then we can get you on the other side of the station break.
I think after the station break.
Okay, let me put you on mute then, and then I'll bring you back in. Okay, thank you very much, Swal. I appreciate that, bro. Okay, Mr. Fuller, this first hour we've been focusing on solving the race problem, and since I got the music, let's do this. That concludes the first hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Thank you for your participation. If you have to go, again, thank you, and tune in again next week. For those of you who are still on for the second hour, we'd like to welcome you to the second hour after we take this 5-second break. Everybody else who's been on and got to go, thank you, and we look forward to seeing you or hearing from you next week. All righty. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We're just a little bit early, but that's okay. We are today focusing on solving racism, white supremacy first. You solve that problem and all the other problems that we have can be solved. If you don't solve that, you have what we have now. Mr. Fuller has said such in many conversations that he and I have had over the radio. And then he has written a book called The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept to give you some, as he says, suggestions following the code on how this can be done. So when you ask your questions today, keep that in mind, that you want to be solving the race problem, racism, white supremacy first, and then we can, all the other problems, you'll solve them. You can get in contact with the show by calling 516-453-9921. That is 516-453-9921. And make sure that you press the number 1 button. And while I'm on that subject, I mentioned it again in the first hour, but apparently I must have miscommunicated with those who push that button that you would automatically go to the top of the line. That is not true, ma'am. That is not true, sir. My bad. I made a mistake. I apologize. That is not true. What happens is when you do depress the number 1 button, you will get in line and in rotation. You will not dish anybody, and those that are in line, you don't have to worry about somebody coming on and taking your spot. That's not going to happen. I got that message from the people at Blog Talk Radio. They clarified that. Just in case I had made a mistake or indicating that you would automatically go up there. No, that's not true. You just get in line and you'll be next. So hopefully that'll be cleared up. You'll be next in the line of rotation, that is. Okay, got to get that cleared up. Also, you can Gmail me by this, the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. And chances are it will not be read today, but at some point in time it will be read. And if you get in the chat room, occasionally I can and will read your chats. Okay, let me go here. Lynette, I'm going to get to you. Stephen, I'm going to get to you. But right now, I'm going to go to the 213 out in California, and that's Swa. Swa, do your thing, brother. And thank you.
All right. Grand Rising, Bobby, Grand Rising, Mr. Neely Fuller. I just want to thank you guys for the show. It has been the best usage of my Tuesday mornings ever since I've discovered it. And it's allowed me to really get serious about solving the race problem and learn techniques and ways to counter it. And I would suggest everyone spread the show around and share it with everyone you can. But the question I want to ask is, Mr. Neely Fuller, what questions would you ask a black person who says God is making us suffer so we can be free in heaven or so we can rule on earth later?
Well, you ask the basic 4 questions that fit any situation without even putting a label on it, or anything. And that is, you can always go to page 171 and 172. It deals with the wants, the 4 wants. And it applies to you as a person. You ask yourself these questions along with asking other people the same 4 questions. And you ask yourself, what is it that I want to do? Everybody has wants. Every creature has wants. Every minute of every day that you're awake, you have a want, even if it's no more than just walking across the room, changing from one chair to another. That's a want. If you're riding the subway or the bus or whatever, you might say that, well, I don't like this seat, so I'm going to move to the seat across the aisle. So that's a want. So just a simple thing like that. It's still, you're satisfying a want. So every person should ask him or herself, either on a small scale or a large scale, I want to do. First question. Second, why do I want to do what I want to do? Got to have a reason. I want to change from this chair to the other chair because the chair that I'm in is not comfortable. I don't like it. See what I mean? So I'll move to the other side over there because that chair over there looks like it's more comfortable than this chair. So you might do that in a hotel lobby or something like that. That's a simple thing. But it applies to everything. What is it that I want to do? Why do I want to do it? That's the second question. How do I plan to do it? Well, I plan to do it by getting up out of this chair and walking to the chair on the other side of the room. That's how I plan to do it. That's my plan. What is the plan? All right? So that's your plan. And you executed your plan by doing it. Now, the 4th question, that's what you call the catch-all question. What do you expect the constructive result to be? You say, I expect the constructive result to be that I am now comfortable, more comfortable than I was in the chair I was sitting in before on the other side of this hotel lobby. That's what I expected. That's why I got up and moved from that chair to this one here. And it's the same thing that applies to everything in your existence. So you ask the person that you're talking to, what is it you want to do? It applies in any situation. those 4 questions, anytime, anywhere on the planet. It applies to every situation that you can name. Because somebody wants something. Everybody wants something. All the time. So you center on. You ask the core questions without rambling all over the place. So when a person says something about God or something like that, you just simply don't deal with that, because might get into a religious argument, and you don't ever want to do that of any kind, because that'll just go on and on and on. The record kind of shows that, and it might even lead to a fight if it really gets hot enough, because people have fights about religion. Okay, they kill each other, they drop bombs on people about religion. You don't want to get into none of that. So you just go the want route. Well, what is it you want to do? Okay? Not how you feel, and what you think when you're alone and all like that. What is it you want to do? Or what is it you want me to do? You can ask the person that. Evidently, you want me to do something. What is it you want me to do? Question 1. Question 2, why do you want me to do it? Question 3, how do you plan for me to do it? Now, you must have a plan. And number 4, what do you expect the constructive result to be if I do what you want me to do? What's going to be the constructive result? And that's it. You don't have to get into a long argument, because a lot of people, particularly if you're talking about religion, what they're really talking about is, I just like to argue with you about religion, because that can take up a whole lot of time. It's a good sport. It really, with a whole lot of people, it is a sport, arguing about religion. Mm-hmm. Start a good argument about religion, and just go on and on and on and on. And the argument, it can be friendly, or it can get hot, or it degenerate into name calling. Mm-hmm. But I'm not saying that's anybody's intention, but that's the intention of a lot of people, of some people.
Okay.
But you can just cut it short just by saying, well, wait a minute, evidently it's something you want me to do. Now, the person might say, well, I want you to believe what I believe. Okay, that's okay. Go ahead. What's your plan? And then, bottom line, now what do you expect the constructive result to be? And don't argue about the answers that you get. See, because you want to continue to have a conversation. And what's the difference between an argument and a conversation? An argument is designed to do what? Win arguments. A conversation is designed to do what? Solve problems.
Solve problems. Okay.
So when this person is talking to you about God or anything, they can talk to you about anything. You don't get angry or frustrated or anything. You just go to those 4 questions. They'll take everybody right where they need to be. Might not take everybody where they want to be, but it'll take everybody where they ought to be. Try it.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you, Swa from L.A. Telephone number, again, 516-453-9921. Make sure you depress the number 1 button, and you will get in line for Mr. Fuller to answer your questions. Keep in mind there are other people that are before you. Let's go to the 330 area. He's been holding for a long time. Let's see if I can get you in here. Darnell, I think I got you. Okay, Darnell from Phoenix. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
My question is, Mr. Fuller, according to the code, do suspected white supremacists hide their racism and white supremacy behind their politics? And if so, why?
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
The white supremacists hide their racism behind politics?
Yes, sir.
Well, what is
Why do
politics? Politics is just interaction between people. That's all politics is. I mean, according to the compensatory definition, it's just people relations. We all engage in politics, and we're engaged in politics right this minute. When a person asks me, am I political? Am I a person, a political person? I say yes. Everybody is. The minute they say something to somebody else, good morning. That's a political act. Politics is nothing but interaction between people. Pure politics, according to counter-racist codified logic. That's it. That's all it is. So the white supremacists, in all areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, if a white person is a white supremacist, everything that they do and say is to make the system of white supremacy stronger in all of those areas of activity. So in answer to the question, if they're in, say they're in quote, unquote politics, whatever they mean by that, and you can always ask them. Or if they're in the educational field, whatever they mean by that, and you can always ask them. And then you can ask them those 4 wants. See, you can always go to those. If you start getting frustrated or lost, go to the 4 wants. Sir, what is it you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? And what do you expect the constructive result to be? You can always ask those 4 questions, and it'll always take everybody on the planet right where they ought to be, whether they want to go or not. The answers to those questions. Try it. It always works.
Okay. Thank you. Darnell, thank you. And do not be a stranger. Let me see here. I'm supposed to get Philip. Philip, now I'm going to try to get you in here as I'm working this machine. And then Stephen, Philip, and then Lightning, and then Stephen. Let me see if I can get Philip in here. Let me point it down here. Bear with me here, working this technology here. Let's see here. Philip, wait a minute. I don't see you in here. Wait a minute. Get you in here.
Hello?
Yeah, Philip, got you?
Okay. Greetings, gentlemen.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't see you on my board here. Okay, go ahead, Philip.
No problem. I just have 2 questions.
One. I can only give you one now, Philip.
One question. Okay. One question. The main question I have then is I am really struggling with the sex section of the book regarding non-marriage, and I just want to ask, when President Obama was, I would just want to ask this to Mr. Fuller.
Okay.
Would you say that President Obama was either attempting marriage or in a non-marriage? And please walk me through that, your answer.
Well, I don't usually refer to people. The codified process is usually, you stick to principles and concepts, because everything starts with a concept. The concept of what's constructive and what's not. Those are the 2 basic things. So you just simply say, you go into the question mode. Black people, period. Mm-hmm. Are they married or not married? Even though you go through ceremonies, I've been through one, okay? Been through the ceremony of what we call marriage. But am I really married? The answer is no. I said I was, and when I tell people I am, according to the law, quote, unquote, but on account of the system of white supremacy, no, black person on the planet is married to anybody. Why? Because you're subject to the system of white supremacy. A marriage is not just between one person with another, or one person like where they have polygamy to several persons and whatnot. No, it goes farther than that. That's why people stand before witnesses and all this type of thing. They got other people involved. And those other people are supposed to be supportive. But when you're a prisoner of war, you're not married, because you're not going to even be able to carry out the duties of a married person. You are beholden to whoever's running that prison. And in the system of white supremacy, no black person on the planet can be married to anybody, because the system of white supremacy itself, racist man and racist woman, they are running that prison. And you, as a black person, according to the code, are subject to the dictates of a hostile power. You're born into captivity. A person born into captivity as a prisoner of war cannot be married to anybody. Why? Because all of your areas of activity are dictated to you. According to Neely Fuller, no. According to logic. Dictated by whom? By the prison masters. And what the white supremacists have done, racist man and racist woman, those white people who practice racism, they dominate all of the affairs of the non-white people of what we call the planet Earth. And that statement is either true or false. All the areas of activity, you have to answer to them. If you have color in your skin, answer to them in economics, answer to them in education. Dark-skinned people all over the world said, you know what I'd like to have? See, here again is a want. I want an education. Well, how do you get an education? You better start looking around for some white people. Now, we say that with a straight face and really don't realize the depth of what we're saying. They say, I'd like to go somewhere where I can get educated. Oh, well, where do you go to get educated? Some black people even brag about it without really realizing what they're saying. They'll show you all of their degrees on the wall. Well, wait a minute. Where did you get these degrees? Oh, I got these degrees from a black institution, all black. No white people around nowhere. Oh, you did? Okay. Now, the people who originated these degrees of education that you got, what was their color classification? It always comes down when they stop to think about it. If they've stopped to think about it, these people were white.
Got it.
Right
Got
now,
it.
as we speak, there are people in boats trying to get across water, and they say, where are you going? I've left my village because I'm going to get educated. Well, where are you going to get educated? I'm trying to make it to Sweden, Norway. Mr. Trump can tell you about Norway. I'm trying to get to London, Paris. Oh, who's in London and Paris that can give you an education that you couldn't get in your village? Oh, the very smart people. Smart people? Who are they? Oh, the people who are smart. What is their color classification? Well, I guess, yeah, they're white, aren't they? Well, if you put it that way, I guess so. We need to stop bragging. We're victims of white supremacy. But going back to the marriage thing, Can't be married in the system of white supremacy if you're black. You can say that you are because they say that you are, but you're really not because you're not in control of anything. A married person is in control of something. You're not in control of nothing if you're black. As a prisoner of war, what prisoner of war is in control of anything? Nothing.
Nothing. All right. Stephen, thank you very much for being a caller, and as I always tell my callers, do not be a stranger. Thank you very much, Stephen. All righty, let's go to the 334, and that's going to be Lightning from Lynette, Alabama. Lightning, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Thank you for calling, my brother. Go ahead.
Well, you're welcome, Mr. Bobby. Thank you, Mr. Bobby. Good morning to you, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. How are you gentlemen today?
Yes, sir.
Still learning.
Good morning. I had a couple of questions, but I know I can only get one in.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Fuller, have you ever seen the movie Matrix?
No, but I have it in my possession, and I've never even looked at it. But a lot of people have recommended that movie as causing them to think at a level that they've never thought of before. So if the movie does that, the movie,
yes, sir,
I say, has constructive value. Anything that helps a black person to think constructively. These are the type of movies that you should see.
Yes, sir.
And if the Matrix
it
does
emphasizes. Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
It emphasizes the importance of choice, which I believe goes along with the concept that you have, Mr. Fuller, about making a choice whether it's constructed or non-constructed. The choices we make, they're either going to be constructed or non-constructed. And I think that choice began, the other question I had was, do you believe in the pre-existence? But just to make this short, I believe that our first choice came in the pre-existence when we had to choose to follow what a lot of us call the Savior, Jesus Christ. And in that choice, what I mean by pre-existence, I believe everything on the planet existed spiritually before it was made flesh. And by the choices that we made, we end up here. And God sent us here, like you said, to solve problems by making choices constructed or non-constructed. And I think everyone knows about the story about Cain and Abel and what happened there. And I think color was added in there with Cain by his choice. It was non-constructed, and he was, according to the Bible that I read, King James Version, he was cursed with a darkened skin so that people could recognize him when they would see him. But if they chose to be mean to him, then there was a punishment that went along with that. And I think that carries us down to where we're at now. And I couldn't find it, but I read a documentary about when they started separating people race by color, and it's in the 1800s. I'll try to find it next time I call and share it with you. But that's one of the areas that I think the race started in the 1800s. I try to find it and share it with you. But I really love your concept. I have both books, but it's all about choice. And I think one of the most stumbling block for us to achieve and maintain the code is the area of activity called religion. I think that's one of those that's really confusing because you need to have one, but it's based on your choice and belief, and I think that complicates the code.
All righty, Lightning. Thank you for your question and your VGQ. Thank you very much. Don't be a stranger.
Thank you, Mr. Bobby. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
All right. Mr. Fuller, let's see here. This comes from Theodore Lush. He said this. He came across the name of Carol Drake, who was formerly married to Billy Eckstine. You remember Billy Eckstine, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And featured...
An excellent singer, in my opinion.
He was,
excellent
I'm sorry.
Singer.
Excellent singer. Okay.
Yes, sir.
This says and on the cover of Jet magazine issues April 1954 and February 1957. She made an appearance in the 1957 movie Band of Angels with Clark Gable, Yvonne DiCarlo, Sidney Poitier, and others. Have you seen that movie, Mr. Fuller, Band of Angels?
I vaguely remember it. I do remember Mrs. Carol Drake.
Yeah, Carol Drake.
Who became Carol Eckstein. And I do remember Band of Brothers, but vaguely.
Okay.
Because it's not on my list of movies.
Okay, yeah, because
I think
that was
she played the part of a slave girl or something like that.
Okay, because he says this, and you just answered the question. He says, first, is this movie on your movie list where you just answered that?
No,
and
it
secondly,
isn't.
Yeah, okay. And secondly, he said, would you think that a lesson learned according to this movie that the system of racism, white supremacy, would have non-white people always, quote, serving them, whether consciously or unconsciously? Note, end of quote. Note, serving referred to as, number one, entertaining them, subjecting themselves to humiliations, engaging in sexual encounters, or maybe even sacrificing oneself for them. Thank you.
Well, the truth of the matter is all black people are born into a system of white supremacy. And the system of white supremacy is a prison system for all black people in the known universe. And so that's what we have, according to what? According to all the evidence, according to logic. That's what the system of white supremacy is. And so all of the black people that are on the planet Earth now are born in prison. We're prisoners of war. War was declared whenever the system of white supremacy was established. Now, when? Lots of people debate it. I don't, because I don't know. But it doesn't matter. It's here now. It's the only show in town, you might say. And in capital letters, it's called the system of white supremacy, which is a prison system. And when you're born in prison, you serve the prison system. There's no such thing as a black person not serving the system of white supremacy. You're serving it just by being on the planet Earth, wherever you are, and you're classified as black. You're serving the system of white supremacy because the white supremacists are dominant over all of the non-white people of the planet Earth, according to evidence. They are the dominant. They are the people who make the major decisions about what people are going to do and not going to do, and where they're going to do it, and how much, in every area of activity. So if we're talking about service to the system of white supremacy, there's no argument, or shouldn't be, or in a conversation. That's obvious. If you're black and you're born in a world government, you are serving that government. The only world government is the system of white supremacy. There are people who say that they have tribal governments, and they have this and they have that. The white supremacists look at all of that and say, that doesn't mean nothing to me. I'm in charge of all of you dark-skinned people. And if you don't believe it, it'll take me about 5 minutes to show you. So you get a wake-up call. And every person of color understands that. That's what white supremacy means. They can prove what they say. Other people can theorize about this, that, and the other. But when the white supremacists come around and you have color in your skin, I don't care what your religion is or anything else, you better get hopping. And so far, black people have proven that that's what they do. They get hopping.
They get hopping. Let me do this, Mr. Fuller. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I'm your co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, call this number, 516-453-9921. And be sure to depress the number 1 button, and you will get in line below the other callers who are online. And Mr. Fuller will have an opportunity to get to you if we have enough time left, which we have about 29 minutes, so hopefully we can get to you. You can also email me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. Now, I can't say for sure that your Gmail will be read today, but I will address it, as I just did with Brother, I believe it was Brother Lush. Just address his Gmail. We try to work them in whenever we can before it is automatically deleted. I have nothing to do with that part of it. But anyway, those are the ways that you get in contact with the show. And I would ask, please, ma'am, please, sir, that you can ask your one question, or if it's going to be a question, then let it be a question. And if it's going to be a VGQ, then let it be a VGQ, because we are short on time. So as we used to say when I was at a brick and mortar congregation, remember your brothers on your sisters, because we are short on time, to give Mr. Fuller a chance to answer your question. Before we go on, Mr. Fuller, and we're getting ready to get to you, Stephen, so hang on. Someone wanted to know, what is the difference between white supremacy and white rulership?
None. Just different words.
Okay. There you have it. Be good one. You heard it right there. All right, let's go to the phone lines in the 407. Chi-Town again, and we have Stephen, who's been holding. All right, Stephen, you are on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead with your question.
Good day, Mr. Fuller, and good day, Mr. Bobby. My questions for Mr. Fuller are concise and brief, and I hope Mr. Fuller's answers are the same. Based upon the Code Book of Suggestions, is it reasonable and logical to say that in order to produce justice, we must first produce justice within our own lives of people activities? And can this practice solve the race problem?
Is it safe to say what?
Is it reasonable and logical to say that in order to produce justice, we must first start producing justice within our own life of people activities?
Well, if I understand the question, it comes down to those two words again, constructive results. If that phrase, our own life of people activity, that's just another way of saying solving problems or constructive results. Solving problems produces a constructive result. Constructive results comes from solving problems. Result means you did something. You did something like what? You solved the problem that produced a constructive result. So the key word, two words, the most important words, everything, I'm going to say it again, that black people do should have the focus of producing a constructive result. Underline those two words, constructive result. That's the question. This thing that I'm fixing to do, this thing that I'm planning on doing, this thing that I thought about doing, this thing that somebody suggested that I do, is it going to produce a constructive result? Yes or no? That's it. And counter-racist codification is just about all of that. If you want a simplified way of saying what it's all about, It's about producing constructive results, because the one thing that the white supremacists do not want black people to do is that without them being in charge of it, and that's to do anything that's going to produce a constructive result. They'll let us do anything in economics. They'll come around and take a look at it, and if they figure, you know what, this is going to turn out to be a big mess that these black people are doing, it's not going to produce a constructive result. There's something they're doing on their own. Let them do it, because it's not going to produce a constructive result. Let that teenager go out and buy that 9mm pistol, okay? Because 5 years from now, he's going to wind up killing the same person that he played football with when he was in high school. We already know that. He certainly ain't going to do nothing to us. So who is he going to use it on? He's going to rob the grandmother who lived down the street of one of his buddies on the bus stop 8 years from now. That's not a constructive result. But we know where his mind is, and that's where he's going. That's what he's going to wind up doing after he goes here and goes there and does this and does that. He's going to wind up killing one of his buddy's grandmothers when she was a little too slow handing that purse over to him on the bus stop. That's going to happen 8 years from now. But he's walking around with that pistol in his belt, and that is going to be the result of him having that pistol in his belt and the kind of people he's going to be around, because he's going to kill somebody that he is around. The code says that. That's why black people shouldn't have no contact with each other at all if they're poisonous. The one thing you want to do is not have black people get together. You want to scatter them out. You can almost feel the tension when black people come together without an agenda. Now, black people do all right, like with the Million Man March. They're correct about that. It was peaceful back in October 16th, 1995. Million black males. That many black males all in one bunch, and nobody starts shooting? You get that many black males in the northwestern hemisphere together for anything other than something that's well understood, something that's codified. See, that march was codified, and proof of it was there was no killing. Black people, we got a thing about when we get together, there's got to be some killing. I mean, somebody gonna start shooting. That's for sure. That black people killing black people. That's our whole manhood. That's how we prove ourselves.
Yes, sir.
Ask homeboy if that ain't true.
Okay. A million black men, and they didn't storm the Capitol building? Wow. Okay.
And they just start killing each other.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, MF stepped on my foot and didn't say excuse me, or you did say excuse me, but you said it too late. Bam, 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 bam. Take that.
But the record shows they didn't.
I'm a man. That. Don't nobody talk to me like that. That's us. That's us all over the world. That's the best we can do. That's the black male at his best. That's what we're known for. We don't produce a constructive result in any situation without master standing over us with a whip.
Okay. Going to the Gmails. This is from Afro Astrology. He says that he has concluded that the majority of so-called black people do not wish to remove the system of white supremacy and replace it with justice. Most of us still celebrate the white man's holidays. We give all of our money back to them instead of building for ourselves. We are the only race of people that does that. Every other race instinctively puts their own people first and practices group economics. We do not. All we do is make some money from the white man, buy some things from the white man, and then strut around in front of other black people and make them jealous of us. We have serious mental, emotional, spiritual defects that only God can fix. Chattel slavery may have been abolished in 1865, but it is still alive and well in our minds. It came from VGU, came from Still Learning Afro-Astrology. Mr. Fuller, you mentioned the Million Man March. What do you think constructive came out of that Million Man March in regards to solving racism, white supremacy?
I can't evaluate that.
Okay.
All I can say is the system of white supremacy is still here. So we need a code for replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. But the code does not allow me to evaluate a project by non-white people that was addressing race, racism, and or counter-racism. Otherwise, I get into an argument with somebody rather than a conversation. It will breed that type of thing. So if I make a critique, the code says I can't critique someone else's work who is non-white, and that work is associated with race, racism, or counter-racism. The Million Man March was involved in the concept of counter-racism. The speeches that were made were associated with racism and counter-racism. And the people who, quote, unquote, organized it apparently had that in mind. So that's important, that I do not make a critique of that, except I can observe what actually happened, like I did. See, a person might call that a critique, but I can't pass judgment on the value of it.
Okay.
The people who organized it are the people who you can ask questions of them about what the value of it was. And let them say, because for one thing, they can best say what they were trying to achieve. And did they achieve it? Now, what I've written is a textbook for victims of white supremacy. And so far, I have failed at what I have set out to do, because this book was supposed to be designed to solve the race problem. I say you shouldn't play around with a problem and just kind of, tinker with it if it's a real problem.
Yes, sir. You
should be trying to solve it. So if I leave this planet without solving the race problem, I have failed at what I set out to do, because that is the thing that I set out to do, not to just keep talking about it and bouncing it around and playing games with it. Solve it, Fuller. That's your assignment.
Okay.
Now, if I fail to solve it, that's my failure.
Yes, sir.
And should be said so.
Yes,
that'll be my epitaph. I was trying to do it. I failed at doing it. End of story. So you either do it or you don't.
Using counter-racist compensatory logic, would it be correct to say concerning that question about the Million Man March, would it be using counter-racist compensatory logic, would it be safe to say, without causing argument, they did what they did?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just to be straight.
In fact, that's what the code says specifically. If you ask me anything about what a non-white person is doing that's involved with the race problem, either directly or indirectly, I'll just say that person did what they did.
Or
they said what they said.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And if you ask me for anything else, I'll say, now, if you want a further comment, go and talk to the people that you're talking about.
Yes.
I mean, talk to the specific non-white people who did what they did or said what they said. Don't ask me to critique it, because that's going to lead to an argument with somebody. And I'm not looking for an argument. No black person should have an argument with anybody ever.
Okay.
You can have a conversation, but you don't have arguments. The difference between an argument and a conversation is an argument is designed to win arguments. A conversation is designed to solve problems. So if you're not going to solve a problem, then you don't make any comment except to say, whatever that person said, that's what the person said. And if you want to comment or an editorial on what the person has said, and that person is black, go and talk to the person that said it. Don't ask me.
Going to the Gmails, this comes from Future Begin. Says this, Mr. Fuller, we are in this earthly prison because of what?
Because of a failure to recognize the system of white supremacy when it was first being assembled and put a stop to it before it even got off the ground. But it turned out to be the strongest political and religious system in the recorded history of the entire planet Earth. No religion is stronger than the system of white supremacy. And no political system is stronger, more powerful, more influential than the system of white supremacy. According to what? According to the evidence, that's what. And it never should have been in the first place. But it's the strongest.
Yes, sir.
Everybody caters to
it. Okay. While we're at this juncture here, because we have 12 minutes and 25 seconds left in the show, I want to take just a few moments, Mr. Fuller, to have you discuss your code book. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Yes. I was looking around for a book many decades ago that would tell me what to do. Everybody was talking about what their theory was, and everybody's talking about how they felt. Black people are real excellent at talking about how they feel about stuff, how they feel. I said, okay, I got that. I feel terrible, too, about how everything is. But is anybody writing anything about what to do about anything? Any problem that needs solving that involves black people, is anybody putting down any kind of guide? And people put forth some answers they said were answers. They said, well, trust in this religion or that religion. Usually I got a religious answer. And I said, okay, well, what does a religion require you to do? Is there anything that you do? And they'll say, well, trust in this and sing some songs and whatnot. And I say, yeah, but I want some details about what to do and what not to do on a daily basis. Does anybody have anything written down like that? And I kept looking. And I read a lot of stuff. But I couldn't find anything that anybody was even attempting to write about what to do about anything, except look forward to, sometimes in the future, maybe this and maybe that, and one of these days this. and one of these days with some luck, or one of these days with some faith, or one of these days, everything is one of these days. I say, well, I'm here today. I don't know about tomorrow. I'm here right this minute, and I got a problem right this minute. So can anybody tell me anything about what to do with this problem that I got right this minute? I got to go and talk to these people, within the next 5 minutes. What am I going to say? What am I going to say? Does anybody have any idea of what I am going to say in this very serious matter? And I got to do it in the next 10 minutes. Can anybody, anywhere on the planet, all of these people who are so wise, tell me what to say? And I can have some hope or some guarantee or something that will work when I say it. Does anybody have anything like that? I found that nobody had nothing. How did I find it out? By asking people. Well, one of these days, good luck. These are the kind of answers I got. Good luck. Good luck with that. Well, I hope the Lord is with you with this one, because, I ain't got no answers, but the Lord will answer. Okay, that was okay. But I said, but do you have any advice? Because I noticed that white people, they had a code. And it usually worked. And I said, that's what we need, a code. We need something that works. Something that when we do it, we know it's going to work. We know it's going to work even before we do it, because we'll run tests on it. Do we have anything like that? And the answer was no. So I started trying to write one, starting in 1956. About 6 raggedy pages. And then I started trying to do some of the things that I wrote. Just a little prescription, you might say, about what to do in this situation, what to say in this situation, and definitely what not to say in this situation. And I found out that a codified approach is the approach, but nobody was writing anything taking a codified approach. Codified means when you do it, it works. When you say it, it works. And so I said, since I can't find anything like that, I'm going to attempt to write one. I'm going to take these 6 pages and expand it as far as it'll go. And that's how I wound up with the textbook for victims of white supremacy. That's what I offer myself, because I started writing for myself. And then some of the people started noticing that I was working around in 1956 at that time. And some of the people said, Fuller, you got a peculiar way of going about saying things. Where'd you get that from? Going about doing things. I noticed it's something, I can't put my finger on it, but it's something different. I said, well, I followed the little raggedy code that I got in that particular instance. And it worked. And why did I follow it? Because I kind of figured it would work before I did it, before I said it. Because that's all a code is, doing something that works. And so I came to the conclusion that that's something all black people needed. That's the missing link. We talk about how we feel, but we don't talk about what to do about anything. And that's what we need. And when we come up with something that we find that works, we should write it down and pass it on. And that's what codification is all about. Now, you can get my bit of the code, because the code is not complete until all problems are solved. But the little bit that I have written down is available by going to producejustice.com.
Okay.
Producejustice.com, which is all about what? What to do about things. Not just sit around moaning and groaning and singing, but what to do to solve a problem and get a constructive result. I think I may have stumbled upon a few things that might be helpful.
All righty, Mr. Fuller. Thank you.
Go to producejustice.com, and you can get my writings and see what you think. And if you can use it, use it.
Okay, this comes from Mr. Jolapi in South Africa. He says, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., democracy is defined as majority rule with consideration of a few. In your observation, Mr. Fuller, does democracy exist anywhere on this planet, on anywhere on this earth? What is the compensatory response to the word democracy? And I'm still learning in South Africa. That's our last question for today, Mr. Fuller.
All right. Me too. That's my answer. I'm still learning because different people that I talk to have a different definition. That's the magic of words, quote, unquote, the magic. And that is, I don't have a definition because there are so many definitions. People say that we are a democratic republic or we are this, that. What's a republic? And what's the difference between a Republican and a Democrat? I mean, I don't even know that. I couldn't answer that question. I mean, what do those words mean? But I do know, in answer to the main question, who is running all of the affairs, quote unquote, of the black people of this planet that I share with other people called the planet Earth, and that is those white people who practice white supremacy. I do know that, if I don't know anything else. So in answer to the question about democracy or republicanism or fascism or communism or this type of ism and that type of ism and this religion and that religion, I do know if you have color in your skin, you have to answer to people who practice what, as a conglomerate government, the system of white supremacy in capital letters. That's the only government that I'm really familiar with.
Okay. Well, we're just about at the end of it. Let me ask you this, Mr. Fuller. Looking at some of the chats in the chat room, and it appears that some people interpret your answers that you deflect some questions that are answered. Do you think you do that?
I may. And that's why I always want people to get right back to me when I do that, because I have a tendency to wander away. I am aware of that. And sometimes I catch myself and say, wait a minute, what was the question?
Yeah.
All right, so I always want to, like a laser, I always want to answer the question.
Yeah.
And so, like that question was just asked just now about democracy. What's my definition? I don't have one. And I don't think you'll find one in the Word Guide. I'll look it up and double check. But I don't think I have that. But but the code does say this. Anytime somebody uses a word, the person using the word should explain what the word means to them.
So then you are not going back to black people as the lowest creatures on the planet, are you?
No, it depends on how we use those words. What do you mean by low?
Okay.
I mean, are we the highest people on the planet? High, low, middle? What are we on the planet? High, low, middle. See, whomever asks a question like that should describe what the words mean. What do you mean by low? Lower than what? In what area of activity? When? Under what circumstance? Which black people are you talking about? We're all ultimately individuals. So black people being low, lower than what? What does that word mean? In what context?
Well, I tell you what, we are going to leave it there because we only got about 30 seconds. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Thank you for all your questions. Hope you got your questions answered, your concerns. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. And any mistakes that we made, I know I made some, we'll try to do better next week. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Thank you for doing justice.com.